Okay, great. So, remember I told you about imagine, create, and realize? That can apply to anything that you want to do. It's not just architecture. It can be anything. I don't want to show it through architecture because that's what I do. But when I say imagine, create, and realize, it's really about imagining what you want to do or be. You might have certain skills that you are really good at or interests that you really want. So imagine what that can be. Take the time to find out what really makes you happy in the things that you're doing. If it's reading, you might want to become a writer, right? If you like putting things together, you're in the right class with Mr. Jarrett because he knows all about construction, right? If you want to be a chef, right, because you love cooking, you love the way food tastes, you want to mix things together, imagine what it is that you really enjoy doing. Once you imagine that, you need to take the steps to start to create that possibility to happen. You can't just say, I want to do it. You have to start to talk to people that are doing it. Find out what they learned, what they did. You might want to read. You might want to go to a camp that specializes in something. You might want to have a mentor, somebody that actually has done it before. You want to start to create those opportunities that will help you get to a point where you can finally realize what you imagined, being able to create those opportunities, and now you're actually doing it. And that's for anything, not just what I'm going to talk to you about. But the reason I'm using this is because I can speak to you how I imagined, how I created it, and how I realized. And I'm going to show you by going through one of the projects that I've done. First of all, what does this look like? That's like scribble scrabble, right? That's like really scribble scrabble. But what do you think it is?
It looks like a place that would be like in Asia, but then it looks like a sushi place.
Okay, all right. What do you think it is?
It looks like maybe like an expensive apartment building
Oh.
or like a hospital.
Not bad. What do you think it
I
is?
think it may be like an office.
Okay, right. So, listen. When I'm imagining, I try to get as many ideas, down as quickly as possible. And it doesn't need to be really neat because I know sometimes you're like, oh, I got to use a ruler, I got to make straight lines. Well, there's not one straight line in this sketch, is there? No? All right. What do you think this is? Yes, it's a tree. Wow, good one. What about this piece right here? What would you imagine it to be? There are no wrong answers. Yes.
A window?
A what?
A window?
Yes, glass. Very good. All right. What do you think this thing is right there? That's going to be hard. Yes. Yeah.
A bench?
Not a bench. Yes.
Parking lot?
Close.
Stairs?
Not quite. One more guess.
Ramps?
So this is a hard one. So I imagine this to be a train, believe it or not.
Oh.
Right? I know. So when you said parking lot, that was kind of close. So this was my first imagined sketch of
Something
that I started to create. Now, you can really see that these are the trees, right? This is all glass. What was the train is now an area where cars can go. But remember now, I imagined it in a quick sketch. I'm starting to create it because I can't just leave it as an idea. I have to start to make that idea real. So I started to sketch it a little bit quicker. And then ultimately, I'm able to realize it, right? So this is an office building, so you were correct. Glass. You can see the cars down here. You can see all the trees. You can see the masonry, you can see the concrete, and that's my building as I imagined it, as I created it, and ultimately as I realized it. So I'm going to take you through a process. Yes, young lady.
Why do the cars look like that? The cars are not-
Say again.
The cars, why do they look like that?
Why do they look like that?
They don't look real.
Well, this is a rendering. So this isn't a building that's built. This is a rendering. So good eye. Very good eye. Okay, now I'm going to lead you through my process of actually going through a building. This is what architects kind of do. All right? So how many of you are familiar with Abraham Lincoln High School? All right? So you've seen the new school, right? Guess who designed it? Yes. Yep. So when we were first looking at designing it, we had to understand what the school needed. Remember I told you you need to listen to the client? So the school needed grades 9 to 12. They wanted a section for 9th graders, a section for 10th through 12th graders. They needed a gym, a library. They used to have courtyards in their old school. They wanted new courtyards. So I had to come up with some basic organization, what we call bubble diagrams, to figure out where all these things were going to be. Does this work? Oops. Uh-oh. Oh, all right. I was trying to, is there a laser on here?
Press the button, circle.
Oh, okay. Ah, awesome. All right. I like this. So we needed to have like bubble diagrams to show where things were, like that's an auditorium. There's an administration where all the secretaries and principals are. There's a cafe, classrooms here, classrooms here. This is where you would park. So all of those things I had to kind of like figure out how they would go on the site. This is the first kind of like organization piece that we needed to do. Remember I talked about imagining? So what I imagined that this could be would be 3 areas where we had all the gym stuff. We had some classrooms and administration and the library, and this is where the 9th and 12th graders were. This was a quick sketch. Can you think that this could even be a piece of architecture? But if you can imagine it and do it, you can make it happen, right? And this is how you start to make it happen. So now, you see those courtyards I talked about? This is where the 10th through 12th graders are. 9th graders are here. We talked about the gym. We talked about where the administration, cafeteria, library. From that to that, right? And we got parking there. So those things that you saw in the bubble diagram, they start to come out, right? So now that's a plan. You guys are familiar with the plan. But what does it look like when you want to make it a building? So you have to think about making forms of it. So once you have a plan, now you kind of like pull it out of the ground. Like what do you want it to look like? How do you want the forms and compositions to be? So I did a few sketches showing, oops. Oh man, you saw it preview. All right. So I did a few sketches showing where some of those things are, like the entry, you know, those blocks of the classrooms, the gymnasium. And I did a couple of those to kind of figure it out before I did it. And this is my first sketch, creating what I thought the school would be like. So this is the entry. You see the big name going across there, right? This is where the administration people would be. And that through, what are these called again? These drawings?
Construction drawings.
And the front and back are called, begins with an E, elevations. Elevations, right? So I can get to see the height of the building, where the windows are placed. I want to pick out the materials and what colors I want to use. So all of those things, here's the entry again. And that's what it comes out to look like.
Yeah, my brother was that too.
Yeah, see? So this is Abraham Lincoln High School, and this is where you go in. So I also want to talk about how we can imagine things, and we work with a lot of different disciplines. So we have to work with a structural engineer, because we want to make sure that the building will stand up, that it will be strong. And although architects need to know how those things work, we often work with other people to make sure that those calculations and everything are correct. We also work with HVAC contractors because we want to make sure that the spaces are warm and cool. We want to make sure that we get light in those spaces, so we work with electricians. You have to have bathrooms and sinks and all of that, so plumbers are important. So we have to work, even though we imagine this stuff, we have to work with all of those people. Young man, you have a question?
Do you know which architect designed Mayfair?
Design which one?
Mayfair?
Oh, the new pieces here on this campus?
I mean, like the original school.
Yeah, no, I'm not sure. I'm not sure.
Well, you know the one that's doing the new one?
I can find out because it's recently new. And I know a lot of other architects in the city, but I can find out. So this is where, again, we imagine those things, right? But before it's finally built, maybe I start talking about the structural engineers. You see these columns right here? These are steel columns, right? And you see the framing. I know you guys done some framing, right? You see that metal framing. I know you guys have done wood framing, but there's metal framing. You see the material that we use. There's some more steel here. There's concrete. So this is all raw, still open, out in the open. And then, once it's all done, that's what the interior looks like. Yeah, you got a question? Okay. You had a question, young lady?
Oh, yeah. Who asked you to rebuild it?
Who asked us to do this? School District of Philadelphia. Wow. 10, 15 years ago, I had a capital program where they were building at least 5 new schools. And the firm that I was working with at the time was one of the firms that they wanted to have design the school. And we were lucky enough to get Lincoln. So these are some of the other spaces and exterior things that I've done. You see here, this is the front of the school. And like you said, your brother goes there, so I'm sure you recognize that. This is the part where the gymnasium is, and you have a separate entry for that. That's the gym. So one of the guys we work with for the gym actually designed the floor of Cleveland Cavaliers basketball court. So he actually worked with us on this, and you can also see the inside. And finally, I want to let you guys know, one of the reasons why I do what I do is because I really, really love it so much. Again, I talked about imagination, being able to imagine a dream that I have in my head. And this is how I feel when all is said and done. And that's me. And I'm standing in the space that I designed, that I put down on a piece of paper, that was actually built, and I could walk through, and I could touch in every building that I do that is built. This is how I feel over and over again. Because I was able to imagine something, start to create it, and feel good about realizing it. That's it. You can turn the lights on. All right, you guys have questions? Ask away. Young man.
Do you make basketball courts and baseball fields?
We design where they can go, the space that they need. So that basketball gymnasium, I had to think about how big it is, where the bleachers are, how the lights come in. So all of those things I had to think about. Yes.
Did you ever retire from your job?
No, I haven't retired, but I have actually kind of made a shift from practicing design to educating. So to let you guys know about not only architecture, but industrial design, interior design, anything that has a process of designing, and how it relates to what Mr. Jarrett is doing in his class. So imagine all the things that you've been doing here, learning how to build something. Isn't it also nice to think about what you imagine that you want to make really nice, look nice, and feel nice, and now you just can't just leave it there. you actually have to start to build it. That's what Mr. Jarrett is doing. So he's taking some of my ideas and some of my imagination and saying, hey, guys, this is how you can make that happen. By building a foundation, by framing it out so you can get the heights and elevations, by looking at the interior and spaces and seeing how it works. This is how it all goes together. You're right.
So we did a project inside. Our science teacher was making understanding of now he basically did an experiment where he would build a house with code and paper, and he would stitch to see how much light he could trap in the house.
Yeah,
And see if it has good heat.
exactly.
And if it's sturdy.
Yep. All of those things, right? And that makes a nice place to be in and live in. So that's good that you had that experience.
Also, can you explain the length and the width of the place?
The lift, you said?
Like length and width?
Oh, the length and width. So again, that's shown in plan. And what Mr. Jarrett has been doing with you lately is talking about elevations. So all of those things go together to make the building build, right? Young man.
What year did you make that?
Say again?
What year did you make the
Oh, so let me think back. All right, so it's been a year since I've been doing the education thing. 7 years at my old job, then maybe 5. So close to 12 years ago. Yeah, close to 12 years ago. Yep. Mhm. It's- Yeah, because it looks better, right? Yeah. Young man.
When you build something like this, how long does it take?
That's a good question. So we have to actually first do the drawings, like those construction drawings that Mr. Jarrett is going through with you guys, right? And that can take anywhere from 6 to 9 months, right? You get a team of architects that you have to put all the stuff together. Remember, you have to make it fit, you have to make it right, you have to have all that information so when you give it to the contractor, they can build it, right? And then, depending on the size of the project, it can take anywhere from 18 months to 2 years. And Abraham Lincoln took about 2 years and a little bit more to actually build from when they started to put the foundations in to where they put the last piece of furniture in the library.
When you're building, have you ever failed?
That's a very good question. And yes, listen, everything that you do doesn't always turn out perfect. And one of the things that I learned when I was a young architect, if you're off 2 feet, it can cost you $2,000 or $20,000, right? So that's why those drawings are very important. The drawings that Mr. Jarrett is going over with you, because you need to check and double check and make sure that those things are right. So if you don't have those things right, if you don't order the right length of steel to support something, man, you gotta go back, have more steel done, and that can be really expensive.
Exactly. So remember, what is the length of our properties that we have right here?
29 by 20.
Huh?
29 by 20.
Exactly. So I know that when y'all had issues trying to get 29 by 20, y'all boarded up. It might not have been this class, it might be my 8th grade class, where it was giving me 28. Take it all, take it apart. I want 28. It says 29. That's what we go by. That's our Bible right there. If it says 29, that's what we got it. I want 28, I want 20, and 29. So, like I said, we're going to go more into that. But whatever that says, that's what we have to do.
So that was a very good question. Any other questions? No other questions? Great. Hey, listen, I hope this opened you guys' eyes up a little bit. You can see what architecture is. Maybe considering, you might want to be an architect one day, or work with an architect, or do those things that kind of make spaces and places become better spaces and places. How it can have an effect on your community, the blocks that you live on. Designing and all of that is important. And it's also nice to see how it connects to the things that you guys are doing in terms of building, constructing, and being able to be part of that to make these things happen. Yes. You got it? You can come back to it. I'll hang out for a couple more minutes. All right, no other questions? think, hey, you guys are great in terms of like paying attention and asking questions and being polite. I really enjoyed presenting to you guys, and I hope you learned a lot from the stuff that I shared with you. Okay? All right, cool, excellent.